Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to this World Large River and the Delta System Source to Think online talk series. So today I will give an opening and introduction about this talk series and give you also overall the big picture of the current study and understanding of the flux and the fate of source to think. So how to attend this live presentation? As you can see, if you are here today, most likely you log in through the Zoom link, but I have to tell you my Zoom account have a limitation, only allow 300 participants. So if this Zoom meeting room is full or nearly full, if you are out of the mainland China, if you are able to, you are encouraged to watch the live broadcast of this presentation through the YouTube live channel. So unless you really want to engage the interactions on the Zoom, you can stay here. But otherwise, if you just want to watch, you can watch the live channel broadcast through the YouTube. Is the tinyurl.com source to think. And also I posted the link on the chat room. If you Zoom now, you can click the chat and the link was posted there. For China, mainland China, because you cannot directly access the YouTube channel, and you are welcome to log in to join this meeting through the Tengxun meeting. So the ID is here. Also, this information also posted on the chat room. So as we see now, here we have 124 people, and over the Tengxun meeting, over there we have 250 people, almost 250 people. So let's see, if this meeting, if this Zoom meeting, the Zoom meeting room is full or nearly full, if you are able to, you can switch to watch the live broadcast through the YouTube. On the YouTube, it will be also recorded and archive all the presentation over there. You can review it later or future for the teaching or for student discussion. Okay, so I give a little bit of history and the reason I come out to this online talk series. So 2 weeks ago, I'm thinking about, because this coming semester I supposed to have my sabbatical leaving, but as you know, now we cannot travel to anywhere, and also I don't think anywhere is welcome any visitors from America, and just suddenly over the night, we from America is kind of is not really welcomed by the world. So of course, our colleague in Europe, they always said, Paul, we don't like American from beginning, not the overnight. But well, sometimes I give a lot of F word to this virus and also to our president. But 2 weeks ago, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, so what I can do? So I was just sitting here, condemn the virus and president. Oh, we can do something, use this time wisely. So there's a words come to me. So all things working together for good if we have the right attitude. So how about just do some use this time? I can try to host at home, sabbatical at home, to host a weekly World Large River and the Delta Source to Think series. So 2 weeks ago, I began to send an email to some colleagues. As you can see, it's filled up very, very quickly. So many people cannot get the right date for them, but we will plan to extend this talk to next year. If you look at our Google Share document, you will see even 2021 already filled. So when we talk about source to think, basically there's two questions involved. First of all, how much material coming down? That's not only the water sediment, but also including nutrient, including the geochemical element, including the carbon. How much coming down from the source, and where they go. So this is the feet. So when we talk about source to sink, there's correspondingly there's two terms, flux and feet. So here, particularly in the flux, what is the historical change? So we want to know, that change is driven by natural factors. Is climate driving, or geological driving, or human impact, from human. So what's the feet? What is the feet? And this is where they go. So how about the seasonally difference? For example, the summer was winter, or the solid was dissolved. The cross shelf was long shore. Proximal was distal. It's near the river mouth, or cross shore to the deep sea. Is on the shelf, or the deep sea is near shore or offshore. So this is all the question, in this community try to address basically in the last 50 years. So that's the source to sink, but we try to also quantitatively understand the flux and the feet. So very likely, as I mentioned in the last 2 weeks, many colleagues try to fill in this weekly presentation. Very likely we have Jim Best from UIUC next week. So he will talk about the human impact of the global river, that particularly in the river part, the source, the flux, and also Liz from Vanderbilt. She will talk about the dating, the old, the modern delta, and a little bit old delta, how to dating the geochronology. And also we have the Sailboard from Switzerland. He will talk about the global river, the geometry of the global river network. And also we have Irina from Border, Colorado, University of Colorado Border. She will talk about the sediment flux from the Greenland. That is unknown area, but contribute almost 88% of the global sediment flux to the sea. And Europe, I believe the pronunciation is Europe, from Utrecht, he will talk about the globally, the delta human impact and how the delta area, he just published a paper in Nature. And also we have Robert from UK. He will talk about the large river system, how the human interaction, particularly like a Ganges-Brahmaputra, like a Mekong or Asia large river delta system. We have a Hou Jiawang from Ocean University of China. He will talk about the feet of the Yellow River-derived sediment, combine the observation and the numerical modeling. Then we have Edward from UK, the University of Cambridge. He will talk about the world large river system, how much organic carbon, how much carbon contributes from this river system, particularly those large river systems derived from Himalaya mountain system, Himalaya mountains. We have Albert, we talk about global sediment flux, and also Steve from WIMS. He will talk about the Amazon, the Ganges-Brahmaputra, the Irrawaddy and Salween. How about the sediment and the feet of carbon and sediment? And then we have the Professor An and Liu Yu from Xi'an. They just published a paper, talk about 500 years history of the Yellow River sediment flux and give us a little bit longer term. And Hou Jie is also maybe talk a little bit about 50 years. Then our friend Philip from Netherlands, he will talk about the global large river delta subsiding, the subsidence situation, observation and modeling. Then Peter, he will talk about turbidity current, how the material, the mass sediment can deliver to the deep ocean. And so although we have the source to the sink, and then we have the ally from Egypt, he will talk about the impact of the human being, particularly the dam to the Nile River Delta, and also subsiding of the Delta, sea level rise, coastal erosion. So then we have Kevin from Louisiana State University. He will talk about the Mississippi River sediment and the sediment transport and the deliver in Louisiana continental shelf. Then we have Steve talk about large river sediment flux. Then we have other Steve, Schoolbread from Vanderbilt. He will talk about the Ganges, Brahmaputra, the delta and the sediment transport and the claniform and the canyon system. Then we have the Allison talk about the Mississippi River-derived sand, the coarse material, how much of the sand delivered to the Gulf of Mexico, and have the channel migration. And so Jinping from Southern University of Science and Technology, he will talk about Monterey Canyon and Gold Peak Canyon and some canyon system in the South China Sea model. And then we have Chuck, they have studied the Amazon River system and other large river system in the last 40 years. They just published, collectively published as a team, a review paper about the Amazon study. Then I believe he will give a wonderful overview and a review about the Amazon system. And then we have the Shu Ye from Shanghai Tongji University. He will revisit and talk about the source to sink system of the Yangtze River system. Then we have the Witold from Poland. Most likely he will talk about the Mekong and other river delta system. Then we very luckily, we have a Dano. As you can see, we have many observations, but we don't have too many numerical modeling work. So Dano will give a presentation about sediment to the delta and how from the estuary to the delta to the continental shelf. And he told me he working on the Ganges Brahmaputra, and also we working together on the Mekong. So I believe there will be a wonderful talk. As we mentioned, the source, the floods, not only water, not only sediment, but also including carbon and nutrient. Tom Bianchi, he will give a talk, about estuary, the carbon deliver and mineralization from estuary to the continental shelf. Then we have a review. He planned to talk about the Daniel River, Daniel River system and the delta. And Xi Xi from Singapore National University, he will talk about the high mountain river derived sediment flux, the change particularly, and the current global change. Then we have David from UC Austin, who will talk about claniform, which kind of sequence stratigraphy of the river sediment deposit, mainly in the delta and the sink system. So we are still, as we said, it's just that we begin to plan this in the last 2 weeks. If you and your colleague think you also can contribute a good talk and to this series, please let me know. I'm very happy to host. So again, before we start on today's talk, if you want to follow us every week about the presentation, you're welcome to follow the Twitter account called Source to Sink. It's very simple, Source to Sink. And at the same time, you also can subscribe the YouTube account. And as I already posted the link in the chat, so then every recorded presentation will be archived. You can receive a notice. And okay, today I want to give an overview about the flux and the feet of the world large rivers, major river system, the water and sediment to the sea. So of course, there's many colleagues in the past 20 years we working together, particularly like David DeMaster from NC State. And so LeChuck, Steve, Milliman, Professor Yang, and Antron Lee, Professor Shu Go, and our Vietnam colleague, and our Vietnam from Myanmar. So before I give a talk, I want to advertise for next Wednesday, the same time next Wednesday. So Professor Jim Best from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, UIUC. He will give a talk about the nature and the peace of anthropogenically induced change of the world large river system. So please make sure, mark your calendar next Wednesday. So same time. So either coming here at the Zoom meeting or on the YouTube. Here, when we talk about the flux, and we said the source, we want to know how much material coming down from the river system. I think here, John Milliman and Fluxes, his Global River book give a fantastic view how much fresh water coming down from the continent to the global ocean. So the number is very easy to remember. It's about 36,000 cubic kilometers per year. And it's roughly about 4,000 cubic meter per person. So that's give a very good sense how much fresh water from the continent to the ocean. And in terms of sediment flux, as you can see, the number is about 19 billion tons per year. But I want to point out here, as you can see, there's a big arrow. The arrow is signify the amount, the scale of the sediment coming down from the continent to the sea. As you can see, in the Western Pacific, particularly East Asia, South Asia, Oceanic, including Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, this deliver 12.5 billion tons sediment per year, roughly about 70% of the global river-derived sediment actually is from Asia, from South Asia and Oceanic island. So that's a lot of the material. So in other way, if you study river and the delta system, or if you study source to sink, or flux to the feet, basically you just cannot ignore the East Asia and the South Asia area. So if you miss this part, sorry, you missed a big picture. So, okay, if you look at this one, this is the East and the South Asia, the large river system alone. We know the uplifting Himalaya and the Tibetan Plateau, they developed so many large river systems. For example, of the Yellow River, Yangtze, Pearl, Red, Mekong, Irrawaddy, Salween, and the Ganges, Brahmaputra. So those large river systems derived directly from Himalaya count about 4 billion sediment per year. This is about 25%, particularly under the interaction between the East Asian monsoon and the Indian monsoon. So we even haven't talked about the Taiwan, the small island river system. So very likely in the last 20 years, I was able to involve, participate, or sometimes lead some study of those river systems. For example, all the way from the Yellow River system, from the Yangtze, and so we studied the feet on the shelf, and also around the Taiwan River system and the Pearl River. Then 2006 and 2007, we studied the Mekong River-Derived sediment, and also 12 and 11 we had 2 cruises in the Gulf of Tonkin. So also last couple of years, we are able, working with the Steel Keel from and Curtin Harris, we are able to understand the Irrawaddy and the Salween River-derived sediment. So then, if we look at those large river systems, as you can see, this is the historical number. When we talk about the river-derived sediment, for example, the Amazon, the Yellow, and the Ganges, Brahmaputra, and the Changjiang. But this, as I said, this is the old number. This is the historical, used to be deliver this much of sediment. But how about now? So we want to know the historical change of the flux part. And so I want to go through with you very briefly, some large river system. So just scratch a little bit of the surface, because each individual river, most likely some individual speaker in the following weeks, they will talk more specifically or detailedly. For example, the Yellow River, Professor An and Liu Yu and Hou Jie, next couple of weeks, they will talk about more detailedly 500 years, 50 years, the historical change. But I just want to give you a quick taste, a preview. For example, the Yellow River in the Lijing Station. Lijing Station is the last hydraulic station near the river mouth. And as you can see, back to 1950 or 60, the Yellow River used to be deliver 1,500 million tons of sediment to the sea. How about now? The red dashed line is the sediment load. As you can see, annual sediment load almost zero. And if you look at specifically the number, 2016, the Yellow River derived sediment at the Lijing Station only 10.6 million tons. And 2017 is only 7.7 million tons. So as you can see, from the over 1,000 to the single digit, this is 99%. The sediment trapped cannot reach to the ocean. And we all know the big problem, of course, climate is one thing, but the human impact, for example, over this river, we have so many reservoirs and big dams. There's more than 10,000 reservoirs and 23 big dams built along the Yellow River. So I believe Professor Liu Yu and Hou Jie did talk about more detailedly. So what's the impact? If I do a very simple analysis, if you look at this diagram, this is the annual sediment load, this is the delta increase. As you can see here, in order to keep the Yellow River delta, still keep the same size, we need at least 300 million tons sediment per year from the river to the sea. If anything less than 300, the delta begin to shrink, begin to retreat. So as we see now, we only have 10 or even 7 million tons sediment. We have a big problem over there. How about the Yangtze River system? The Yangtze River system, as you can see here, and Professor Shou Ye from Tongji, he will talk about a little bit more detailedly, and some other professors. So, but I want to point out, 1950, 1960, the Yangtze River also delivered 500 million tons sediment. But now, as you can see, it's only around 100 million tons. This is also 80% reduction. But, as you can see, there's many dams. The Three Gorge Dam is here. And over the Yangtze River Basin, there's more than 50,000 reservoirs and more than 20,000 hydroelectric electric dams was built. So as you can see again, the water discharge from the Yangtze River basically stay roughly, it's pretty standard. But the sediment, as we point out, this is the Datong station. It's the last station before the river entered to the sea. As you can see, it's also decreased all the way. So in 2 years ago, 2018, it's only even less than 100 million tons, only 83 million tons. So this is more than 80% reduction. So as a consequence, near the river mouth, this is the Shanghai, this is the Yangtze, this is East China Sea here. Our colleague from East China Normal, Professor Yang, they started the perceptory change. As you can see, before 2000, near the river mouth, we still actively deposition, accumulation positively. But after 2000, it show is the erosion, the red color, particularly after 2004, because Three Gorge Dam is operated 2003. As you can see, the sea over there, the seabed, even up to 25 centimeters per year. 25 is this much, 1 foot per year. As you can, that's a big problem, over there, the big consequence. And if you look at continual move to south, the Pearl River in southern China, so 1960-70 still deliver up to 100 million tons sediment to the sea. But now, as you can see, it's only about 20 million per year. So same thing, a big problem. This over the river basin, there is 14,000 dams. And so our colleague from Hangzhou, Professor Wu Zhiying, a couple of weeks ago, just published a very good review paper, talk about all the river system, including the last three we mentioned. So you can go ahead to review detailedly of his paper published in Science of the Total Environment. And let's look at the Southern Asia, Vietnam, the Red River Basin. So the Red River, as you can see, 1960, 1970, the sediment is still 115 million tons. But after 1985, after the Ho Bing Reservoir built, the sediment sharply decreased. Now it's only about 38 million tons per year. Again, another 70% or 70% reduction, So the Mekong River, this is the Mekong River, this is the planted and built existing dams. Over the Mekong River Basin, there's 57 large dams and 31 in construction and 74 planned. So if you look at the upstream, in the Mekong, in the upstream, before 1992, 91, still upstream contribute 50 million ton sediment. Then after 92, sharply decreased to 17 million tons. And in the middle reach, and still roughly in 92, we still around about 100 million ton sediment. But after that, the middle reach contributed only about 20 million tons. How about the downstream? The downstream, the problem, the Mekong don't have too good of the hydro stations, but 2 years ago, the HA published, in the observation over the delta and show the sediment flux. As you can see here, the used to be the Mekong deliver 100 million tons. But nowadays, it's only 22 million tons. There's a large river in the Southern Asia. Used to be 100 million tons, sometimes more than 200 million tons sediment. But nowadays, only able to deliver to the delta, 20. Or even like 2015, even less than 20 million tons sediment. But the problem even worse, the sand mining estimate from the delta near the river channel is up to 40 to 50 million tons sediment. So actually the team from University of Washington, the Chuck, Andrea, they even observed now the sediment even flew back from the shelf to the estuary, to the channel. So the Mekong basically cannot really contribute any net sediment to the shelf, to the subaqueous delta. So I believe our colleague, Philip Mendelhood, he will talk about it more detailedly. So even worse, 2019 and 2020, the Mekong River had a very low water discharge. Not only the sediment, even the water discharge reduced sharply. As you can see, the river channel is very bad. And as a consequence, the Mekong River Delta, as you can see here, have a very severe erosion. So as you can see here near the river mouth and the zone 1, 2, 3, and 4, as put all together, as you can see, starting from 2005, the overall the delta become a negative growing. And this is the area will show the same thing, the whole delta, the area, we calculate the area, used to be 1970, still 4 square kilometers per year, and then decreased 2, and then 1, and now even negative. The whole delta is a phase change. it's from constructive delta from large river. Now it's kind of overall destructive phase. That's alarming, alert for us, everybody. And as you can see here, this is the coastline 1950, 1965, and 2015. So every year in the eastern part of the Khmer Peninsula, this part of the delta, at least the shoreline retreat up to 20 meters per year. Every year, 20 meters. So as how challenged to this rise for the delta, over there, the economy. So as you can see, the picture show the strong erosion over this delta. And here, not surprising, but even more, if you look at the chip, over the strong erosion area, the 7-9, 7-11. So as you can see, the Sebaceous delta is supposed to have plot top set, fore set, and bottom set. But now you can see in this area, in the nearshore, offshore area, also have a very strong erosional feature, as you see the truncate here. So this is the first direct evidence we observed from a large river system, the Sebaceous delta and the water portion also under strong erosion. That's not surprising, but this is a strong evidence. Our colleague of the Yangtze, they only based on the historical chart map, not this kind of chip observation. And almost after we published this one, our colleague Louisiana State, they also see the kind of underwater erosion from the, near the Mississippi River Delta. So our colleague, Philip Menahood, he will talk about the subsidence. And so also we do a little bit of insight, understand the subsidence across this delta. As you can see, the subsidence reach is up to 5 or 6, even to 10 centimeters per year. So this delta have a lots of problem. And the Chophia River in Thailand, as you can see, back to 1960, so this river still delivers 60 million tons sediment to the sea, but now zero, no sediment to the ocean. And of course, the water is up and down. And so if, of course, this small, tiny river basin, there's more than 3,000 dams. And so as not only about to reduce sediment, but subsidence of the Bangkok, as we all know, up to 10 centimeters per year. And as you can see, the university and also the whale, head. And so even some district already below the sea level. And so the problem is, as you can see, the shoreline, 1952, 71, 91, 2009. So every year in the Gulf of Thailand, the shoreline now, the erosion rate is around 5 meters per year. So Thailand is not a big country, but 5 meters per year is a loss of land. So as you can see, the street mark, and so used to be on the street, but now, no, sorry, it's become totally ocean view, become a small island. And now we move to the Ganges-Brahmaputra. Ganges-Brahmaputra is a very important large river system, but unfortunately, so far there's no good continually historical sediment flux data. So 2 years ago, the colleague Rahman published this one, like engaged in the Ganges and also Brahmaputra. And I was able to reference other material, and we put it together, the water discharge and the sediment load. One thing I want to point out, as you can see, the water discharge is increased. Maybe this is a consequence of the global warming. We need to pay a little bit more attention of this river system. And also, if we look at the two river systems in India, like Godavari and Krishna, flow to the east. So the Godavari is similarly, the water is okay. The sediment used to be delivered 200 million tons. But, as you can see, now it's only 30 million tons per year. Also is about 80%. Krishna, just like the Yellow River system, as you can see, the water also decreased and the sediment, boom, almost zero. So that's the other two large river system in India. And so let's look at the Indus River. Indus River, the water, this is from the minimum. So from the water and the sediment discharge, similar to the Yellow River system, as you can see, the water decreased almost zero. And the sediment, of course, there's no water, there's no sediment. Sediment used to be up to 300 million tons. But now, boom, it's zero. And we all know there's 25 major dams, built over the Indian River basin. And even the water crisis even caused a conflict between the two dear brothers. And it's very sad to see the brothers fight for waters. And so the Nile River, and so the Nile River system, interestingly, in 1964, after the Swan Dam, particularly High Swan Dam, as you can see, the water decreased and the sediment almost shut down. Almost there's no sediment delivered to the ocean. And if we look at this chart, give you a very bad view, and the flowing sediment around 100 million tons, flow out only single digit. That means 98% of the sediment has been trapped behind the dam. The flow in, flow out, and the deposition is very clear. And if you look at this one, this is a beautiful, very nice. You can see that's the delta formed behind in the reservoir. It's very, very nicely. If you look at the Google Earth, you can see the propagation. This is a beautiful man-made delta. And so I have a dream, one day I really want to use my chirp sonar system. As you can see, I have one of the best chirp technology. We can run a couple survey line if we can see the beautifully delta propagation in the reservoir. And if anybody have a connection or if anybody have the intention to cooperate over there, please let me know. And so, of course, as a consequence, the shoreline retreat, as you can see, 1970 to propagation rapidly. But now the shoreline retreat quickly back. And not only this, with the subsiding and the future sea level rise, maybe 1/3 of the delta in the next 100 years could be submerged. So our colleague Ala will give a very good talk, I believe in couple weeks, about specifically the Nile River Delta. And so then back to home, the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River, is also the Bob made show this, the sediment used to up to 500 million tons, but now, as you can see, is less than 100 million tons. So this river system also shift from kind of a transport limit to a supply limit. I believe our colleague Kevin Xu, Ned Allison, and a couple other colleagues, they will talk a little bit detailed. Today, I just give a little bit overview, a little bit scratch the surface of this river system. So the Amazon, the very, very largest, our colleague a couple years, 3 years ago from UC Austin published this paper about the change of the sediment flux pre-dam and post-dam. As you can see, there's no big change like an Asia river system, but already we can see the impact. And so here I put it together, Yellow River, as you can see, the Yangtze, the Pearl, Red River, Mekong, Chofia River, Irrawaddy, Ganges, Brahmaputra, Godavari, Krishna, Indus River, Daniel River, the Nile River, the Short Arbor River, the Colorado River. Look at the Colorado River, the water and the sediment. Just exactly same the Crucial River, same as the Yellow River, like Indus River, and the Short Arbor River. I only have a couple data points, the Yukon sediment flux, and also Short Arbor River. As you can see, also from 1960s, 100 million tons sediment from Iraq, but now also less than 20 million tons. That's another very interesting river. In my life, if I have a chance, I would like to study the sediment from the Short Harbor to the Persian Gulf and the Yukon River similarly. Interestingly, if you look at the South America, Amazon, Orinoco, Magdalena, and Parana, the water discharge kind of increase. This may different from Ganges-Brahmaputra. Ganges-Brahmaputra, as we mentioned, the water discharge increase, but this may be some climate zone RTCZ shifting. I don't really know exactly, but I hope somebody can pay a little bit attention about this. So, let's see. So, of course, globally, as you can see, there's many dam was built, and the population increase. Overall, from 1950 to now, the global river sediment is decreasing. And so as we know, like Jim Swirsky showed very nicely this, even in the United States, as you can see how many dams was built in the last 100 years. So the human totally changed the landscape of the earth. So all those work, I kind of finished the first version back to 2012. And well, I haven't really finished any paper yet. So I hope, I can wrap up something in the next year or maybe during my sabbatical of this semester. So, okay, I have to move quickly about second part about the feet of the sediment derived to the ocean. So we talk about how much of the material coming down from the river. I just give a little bit overview, scratch the surface, as I mentioned. But I'm a marine coastal geologist, marine sedimentologist. Basically, I'm not a river scientist. So Jim Swirsky, John Milliman, Jim Best, Steve Debbie, they study the river system. I'm interested mainly how after they deliver to the ocean where they transport, which kind of record they formed. So for example, of the Yellow River system, this is the Yellow River mouth, and we can see the plume coming down. And then we studied, try to understand this along-shore transport. As you can see, the profile from here, from the west to the east, show very nicely the underwater Sebaceous Delta extended along shore. And even further, if it's P2 and P3, you can see the mud lobe, that's Delta lobe, up to 30 meters, sitting around here. So around the peninsula, even this area far away, this is 600 kilometers away from the river mouth. Then we have this kind of positively accumulation up to 40 meters. Then, if you look at this one from north to the south, this is far away from the Yellow River. And we still observe this very beautifully claniform or mud wedge in the north to the south, extended all the way from the North Yellow Sea to the South Yellow Sea. And we put it together. As you can see, this is the Yellow River Delta. And we observed this 40 meters mud accumulate, around this area. So we can see the clump coming down, and we able to name this called a distal depot center. We not only have a proximal depot center, but we have a distal depot center. I think kind of we may be the first group really emphasize, the feet or the sink of the large river system, not only the traditional claniform sequence stratigraphy, but have a distal depot center up to 40 meters. So Professor Ho Jia Wang, he will give you more detailed hydrodynamic and numerical modeling about the transport of the material coming down. And his talk is September 23rd. And so as you can see, as I point out, when we talk about the sink or the feet, so we have to not only pay attention to the proximal deposition, but the distal part, far away from the river mouth. So this is at least 500 kilometers. So if you look at the Yangtze, this is the Yangtze River mouth. And as we observed near the river mouth, as you can see, this profile show a very nice, very classic, claniform, sitting above over the seafloor here. And then we can see along the shore, if you look at this one, along shore away from the river mouth, 5 or 6, then we can see also have very nice claniform deposits up to 60 meters. Remember, there's not a river cross shelf transport. This is a long shore transport drifting, and we formed this kind of the claniform. And so put them together. This is the fate of the Yangtze River-derived sediment to the sea. As you can see, there's almost not too much sediment really cross the shelf. Mainly along shore driving, along shore transport. And all the way to the Taiwan Strait, up to 800 kilometers. So the driving alongshore current, particularly, and the winter monsoon. So as you can see this diagram, the material driving and the strong winter monsoon, along the Zhejiang Fujian coast formed this kind of the claniform. And so the Taiwan, small mountains river, as Jim Swirsky, John Menman, they published that in 1992 paper. So we also started this system with our Taiwan colleague. As you can see, also deliver a huge amount of sediment from a beautiful underwater claniform from those island river system. So I think somebody will talk about more detail later. But put them together, as you can see, this is the Taiwan sediment. This is the sediment from the Yangtze, as you can see, very beautifully longshore transport. And so then we move to Vietnam. So as I said in the beginning, I have to give my honor and special thanks to a very nice colleague, David DeMaster. He just retired this year. So he helped me and working with me in Vietnam for the last 15 years. So as you can see, the Mekong Delta. This is the Mekong River mouth, and this is the plume. And like the Yangtze, and the yellow, as you can see, many material could go all the way along the shore. So back to 2006 and 2007, we are able to, the first group get a permission. They issued the first permission to the US scientists. So we are able to working there. As you can see, we work a little bit near the river mouth and also extended, along the shore to the Gulf of Thailand, as you can see. But we don't have too much survey line immediately off the river mouth. And then 2014 and 15, we are able to come back as a team with Chuck Neutrauer and David Master. We able to come back. We do so many survey line, as you can see. And so I just want to show a couple examples near the river mouth. And as you can see, this is Chuck. And so as you can see, very nicely, immediately from the river mouth, we observed that claniform. But one thing, you can see the boundary. The boundary show the Mekong River-derived sediment not really cross the shelf that much, only about 15 to 20 kilometers. As you can see the size, you can see the line. The line is so short, is also within water depth 20 meters. So that's interesting. So you can see the claniform, and also we put it together. We have such a beautiful, very nice 3D diagram show the distribution of the Mekong River-derived sediment on the shelf. So as you can see, nobody needed to run the chip anymore. We covered almost every place. And this is the lead to 10, as you can see near the river mouth, up to 10 centimeters per year. Then you also have a distal depot center near the Khmer Peninsula, also can up to 10 centimeters per year. And this is the distribution. As you can see, not too much across the shelf. Most of the Mekong River-derived sediment, the feet all sink is within 20 meters, but a huge amount, a portion, 300 kilometers, go along shore transport and even extended to the Gulf of Thailand. And so, as you can see here, and of course, there's a little bit numerical modeling. I don't want to mention too much. It's mainly driving and the winter monsoon, similar to the Yangtze, similar to the Yellow River system, as you can see, extended all the way coming down here. And so later on, Daniel and other colleagues will talk about more detailedly about numerical modeling. And so now this is the last major river system I want to mention, because we just started this Irrawaddy River system. And you can see this river system combined the Irrawaddy and the Salween up to 600 million ton sediment. Those large rivers almost is the last unstudied large river system. But not only this, even more, this, as you can see, there's subduction, a trench, the Andaman and the Sumatra trench subduction in the Bay of the Bengal. And some evidence indicate sediment could directly deliver to the trench. Because in the NSF Martin program about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they tried to searching for such a candidate where they can combine the subduction and the sediment source margin. This actually is a perfect location. And I didn't aware any large river system in the world dump so much sediment with the active fault. You can see this back arc basin faulting across the delta and also a subduction trench. That's such a unique place. And as you can see, this system, and so just very quickly, and so used to be believed sediment coming down and also deliver through to the canyon system. And so 2017, Steve, Wims and NC State with the University of Yangon, we joined to have the cruise over in this area. So I just want to, give you a little bit of view. As you can see, American scientists and the Myanmar scientists, we're working very nicely together. And so the result, as you can see, we found the boundary, the mud distribution, also the thickness and the sequential thickness, transgressive surface. You can see the 3 and the 4, and then you see the line 27 very nicely shows the Holocene mud coming down, top set, 4 set. Then we see the boundary, and also you can see the active faulting, in this area. This is fantastic. This is beautiful. And sediment stop here around 90 meters. All the way from 90 to here, there's no sediment covered on the seafloor. And if you look at the next one, the line 7, you can see another beautiful claniform coming down and the faulting, and inside and beneath. So near the river mouth, we observed this, and you can see here this 2 line and this 3 line, very short cross the shelf. And then, even in Bay of Bengal, in the western side, we see a very nice, like a blanket sediment covered the narrow margin. But beyond that, you can see very likely the sediment escape sliding all the way to the trench. Because we use a small boat, I have a short cable, we are not able to really observe that 1,000-meter water depth. We want to come back. If anybody interested, we're working together. We want to come back there, look at how much of that terrestrial sediment, even carbon, dump to that trench. And so as you can see the 3D view of this system, and you can see the boundary, the Gulf of Martaba, and near the river mouth, and you can see here, and we see very nicely distribution, even Bay of the Bengal. And so we didn't observe the too much sediment really coming to the canyon system, but we need more study over there. So, okay, so I want to maybe, don't want to talk about too much, and maybe we'll try to, this system, our colleague, Steve Gilbride, and other colleague, they will give a little bit more details study of that very nice system, and also the canyon observation. So I don't want to repeat too much, but I want to say that along shore transport, the distal depot center, actually in most of the large river system, this is kind of true. For example, the Pearl River Adriatic Sea, as you can see, the plume coming down and the sediment reviewed, along the eastern coast of Italy. Similarly, even the Amazon. So as I mentioned, Chuck, we talk about the Amazon, 40 years study, but Amazon also show a very nice longshore transport. And so, but there's no good chip, like what we did in Mekong, like what we did in Yangtze or other system. So here, this is also my dream on my wish list. Hopefully one day, if anybody have this kind of connection or have the collaboration, I plan to bring my chip. We came from the French Guiana all the way around a chip, all the way, I don't know about, I'm not sure about Venezuela, but at least we can cover this area. We can understand how much of the mud accumulated there, what the sequence stratigraphy. Before the earlier work, there were only a couple old, I believe is not a chip, but maybe some kind of like sparkler or profile or echo sounder. So, but anyway, so in the end, in the conclusion, so in terms of the feet, as we observed, like the Yangtze River system, not only the proximal, but we have a pretty good distal depot center, 800 kilometers traveled. Yellow River, similar pattern, and the Mekong, similar 300 up to 400, to Gulf of Thailand, at a very small, short subaqueous delta, only 15 to 20 kilometers, less than 20 meters. And the Irrawaddy is very unique. And it's not only travel to the east, but also flow to the Bay of Bengal. And it's kind of bi-directional. But we only have one cruise. We need more study over there, So the Amazon, is a very fantastic, perfect example. The longshore driving up to 1,500 kilometers, and also the Ganges. Ganges is also the canyon system. There's only couple river like a Congo, like a Ganges, have that kind of modern sediment able to escape, go to the deep ocean through the canyon system. Not much river-derived sediment cross shelf to the deep sea, only with a couple like a canyon system. And so a large portion is near shore, long shore transported. And beside the proximal depot center, there's always a distal depot center. Distal depot center, I think, is the after we last 20 years, we work on the Yellow, Yangtze, Pearl River, Mekong, Red River, and the Irrawaddy and other river system. As you can see, that's important. We need to emphasize when we talk about the sink, we talk about the feet of the river-derived sediment. We cannot ignore those long-shore drifting part. That's extremely important. And for future, the carbon is an important study, as we mentioned. Also, the Nature paper last year said subducting carbon, and they didn't mention even the Irrawaddy, the Andaman trench. I hope we can pay a lot of attention, for those systems, large sediment. Also, this is second largest organic carbon from the the Irrawaddy and the Solway combined. So that should be a beautiful system, for us to look at. And of course, as we mentioned, Irina, we talk about the substantial sediment from the Greenland. This is other 80% global sediment flux, and even the progradation. Even like the Nile River system, as I said, I talked to the colleague from Israel, the Haifa, they said the sediment all the way coming here. But so far, we still have a little understanding of the longshore drifting of the sediment all the way from Nile. Hopefully, we can work with the colleague from Egypt and maybe together with Israel. It's not easy, but well, we can try. And so the Gulf of Mexico, this is something I planned a couple years proposed, but I don't know. Kevin Hugh maybe talk a little bit. Eventually, hopefully, if we can get a little bit money, we can working all the way extended to the Texas shelf. And so we can get very good understanding of the longshore transport over there. So I will stop here. And so let's see. If you have any question, if you are in the Zoom meeting, you can hit the participants, and hit the participants, you can raise your hand. So you can, in the participants, there's a function called a raise hand. If you raise hand, you can turn on your microphone, then we can discuss question. Or if you are on the YouTube and chat room, you can type and your question, Austin will see the question, read your question here. And all same thing as the Tengxun, in the Tengxun meeting, we up to almost 300 participants. Here we have 145, 150. And on the YouTube, we have 30 people watching the live streaming. Okay, I'll stop here. Anybody, if you have a question, you can, in the participant, you can click the participant in the Zoom, and you can raise your hand. You can unmute yourself. You can make a comments. Gil.
Hi, Paul, and greetings to everyone from this really diverse and widespread audience. Thank you for organizing this. I think that's just amazing that you could pull this together, and I'm really looking forward to these weekly seminars. And this was a great start and a great way to keep the community together and to keep conversations going. So thank you very, very much.
Well, I emailed to you. You should also give a talk. My email is should reach you very soon.
Okay. But I have just a quick question for you, and maybe someone else in the audience might also be able to answer it. It came up not too long ago. Do you know of, for the Huanghe Delta, know that areas of coastal accretion, and progradation and erosion are very localized depending on where the active river mouth is. Yes. But do you know of any estimates for what the relative sea level change is for the Huanghe Delta and surrounding areas?
I cannot give, but there's some Chinese colleagues, they studied over there. And so the Huanghe, the subsiding used to be very severe because of withdrawal of the oil and the groundwater. Right. And but now a little bit smooth, but still in some portion, particularly the old abundant channel part, still under very strong erosion. We observed a very strong evidence about the cladiform, the spectral delta erosion. And I think Hojie or some speaker can talk about it more detailedly. If you like, you can. I hope you also can contribute some of your observation about the sediment dynamic, this part.
Thank you.
James. See, James, raise your hand, but hey, James.
Hi, Paul. Yes, Jim Best. Hey, Paul, again, thanks very much for a talk. It's fascinating, a really good review. Just a question I was going to ask you, for the Huanghai and the Shangjiang, from the dating that you've got from cores there, when you look at Holocene sedimentation, is there any reflection of climate change and drying through the mid-Holocene that you see in the accumulations of the mud on the shelf?
Oh yes, and actually recently, one of the colleagues from Hojiawang from Ocean University, they published a paper about 7,000 years and look at from the middle Holocene how the sediment flux contribution change. And as I mentioned, other professor, they look at the last 500 years. So I think I will send you the paper. They do have some kind of that kind of Holocene flocculation. And so today I just give a little bit overview, scratch a little bit of the surface. And I think in the next following months, so talk by talk, we can go a little bit detail, each large river system. Anybody else? Oh, there's some question in the chat. He said, just noticed the sediment flux increased in the Parana River in South America, and also sediment flux in the 1980s due to the climate change. And just to give a little bit comments. Very good. Anybody? So if I know discussion is a little bit challenging over the net, but if not, I want to emphasize again, next Wednesday, Jim Best from UIUC, and he will give a talk about the human impact anthropogenically induced change in the world large river system. So I hope you can come back. And if you miss part of this talk, and this is automatically streamed and recorded on the YouTube, and you can go to visit our YouTube channel, and you can over there, you can review the material over there. So thank you very much. If you know any other question, or any comments, I think any other, if not, we can stop here. Okay, so once again, and this still developing, if you want to contribute, or if you colleague, if you have somebody you want to recommend it, please let me know. And we still develop through planning. So contribute a talk to make this talk series more rich. Okay, thank you. I hope I see you next Wednesday.
Hey, Paul, there's another question on the chat.
Sure. Go ahead, read it.
So thank you for your wonderful speech. I'd like to ask you a question. What do you think is the main reason for the decrease in the weight of sediment carried by the rivers when they enter the sea? China has policies to reduce the amount of sand in the Yellow River. Is this one of the reasons?
Yeah, for the Yellow River particularly, there's, because as I mentioned, the dam reservoir, because you use a lot of water, you take away of the water, of course, that's reduce the sediment, but also the soil conservation. I think Professor Wang Houjie and Professor Liu Yu, they will talk a little more detailedly about this. And reduced sediment sounds very interesting, sounds good, but always remember, everything that natural way is the best. Human-made always not the best. And reduced sediment is clean water, but have a big consequence, as we pointed out. At the same time, one thing we didn't talk about, when you reduce the sediment, you keep the same amount of nutrient or pollutant flow to the ocean. The nutrient with a clean, little bit less turbid water, the primary production will boom, will magnify, is enhanced. This is why we see so many that kind of, the eutrophication problem. One of the contribution, I think, is the reduced sediment flux. But I haven't seen any paper So I talked to a couple colleagues, if anybody interested, we should write this paper, the role of reduced sediment to promote the eutrophication. Okay, if any further question, please send me email, then we can try to address in the next couple